It can't last forever. And you shouldn't want it to. Hello, I'm Asterix, and today's video is one that means a lot to me. Tf2, without a doubt, is one of the most well-crafted games of all time. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's definitely up there. And the proof of that is in its continued existence nearly 20 years later. No normal or mediocre game would persist nearly as much as Team Fortress 2 has, and few get cherished nearly as much as it. With the release of the 7th comic, it has a lot of people questioning the meaning of it, as well as hoping for more to continue from here. And in the midst of all this discussion, I've been thinking about the finality of it all. I love TF2, but I feel the 7th comic is trying to tell us something that has been mostly looked past by those reading it, and that's what I want to talk about today. And with that basic summary, without further ado, here is a retrospective on TF2 and its future, as well as the 7th comic. So as most of you know, TF2 is a FPS shooter made in 2007 by Valve Software. What separates it is, among many things, its unique art style and humor, as well as the sheer volume of in-game content that it offers. The game, unlike many others, has continued support both from its community as well from its creators, Valve. All this has led to, of course, one of the longest standing games with a community that yearns for more. The game, even nowadays, pulls in numbers that most modern games can only dream of, and all these factors have culminated in a community that can't get enough of the game, and creators of the game that have had enough of it, and most likely have for a very long time by now. Imagine this. It's 2007, and you finally get to release Team Fortress 2. A game you worked nearly a decade on. So much blood, sweat, and tears went into releasing this, and when you finally do, it's a hit. The game is doing amazing, incredibly well received due to you and your team's many efforts, and you look forward to working on it going forward. After all, Valve lets you choose what you want to do, and you want to keep working on this. I mean, it's basically your baby. You worked on this for so much time. It's personal to you. Then fast forward a few years to, say, 2014, and you're starting to get tired. You've worked on this game for so much time, and while you still love the game, you're starting to get tired of it, working on it. So, you move past it a bit, occasionally coming back yearly for a bit of an update, until 2017. You released Jungle Inferno, and you look back, proud that you kept the game going 10 whole years. As time goes by without content, though, the community gets upset. Very reasonably. I mean, they haven't had anything for years, but also, you don't want to work on the game. I mean, you're a person too, right? And it's your choice. But, you know, you can't just say you're entering support for the game. I mean, then what happens to the community? You sit in this weird limbo as everyone moves on to other things at Valve, where you occasionally want to add new content to the game, but you resort to adding community-made content to the game. Doing what you can to support it, but trying to not force yourself to work on it as the community gets more and more asking, and you just get more and more apathetic to the game you once loved, now feeling an obligation to it. I'm not saying the community is evil for asking for more. I'm saying it's important to understand both sides, and that inherently, we're all human here. There is no big bad villain. The true culprit is simply the passage of time. You can love a piece of art you made and cherish it. Some work on books or characters they made for decades, but eventually you're gonna want to move on. Not out of hate or anger for what you made, though that can happen, but simply because you want to make more things. You want to make something else. After all, that's why the thing you're moving on from even exists in the first place. We wouldn't have TF2 if they insisted on updating Half-Life 1 for 5 years, would we? No, you made one thing and moved on to another. I think the TF2 devs simply wish to move on. They don't hate TF2 or its community, but they don't want to continue to work on something they aren't as passionate about anymore. They have dreams and ambitions too, and this leads me into my next point and how all this ties into the 7th TF2 comic. TF2 Comic 7 opens with many things, all of which I won't be able to go over here because we would be here all day. The main concern here is the administrator. We see her story start in the 17 to 1800s where she continually goes to mess with and torture Zephaniah Man to the point of his death. Inheriting a good chunk of his belongings, she proceeds to carry on with her own life, except as time goes on, she gets more and more obsessive over the fact he's gone. Sure, she hated him, but hating him is what she dedicated her life to. She spends every day walking by his grave, and as she gets older and older thinking about what she once had, and revenge on a man no longer living. Despite having unfounded resources at her disposal to do whatever she desires with her life, she can't get over what she once had, and gets to a point where she goes to end it all over it. Until she's brought back by the Metal Australium. When she realizes the metal can bring people back, in a obsessive and impulsive decision, she goes to dig up the corpse of Zephaniah Man to continue what she once had, keeping him in limbo, alive for years to watch the events of TF2. When Miss Pollen and the others finally walk in, she begs them for more to continue living, and continue obsessing over the person before her, to which Miss Pollen lies, in what can only be described as mercy for the administrator. In this situation, we are the administrator. These characters are written to embody certain aspects of the community, I feel. We look at TF2 not enjoying what we have, but obsessing over our current situation and prolonging the game's lifespan. Like Zephaniah, we sit in limbo simply watching the days go by, getting so worried about updates that we forget why we wanted it in the first place. It's that we love this game and the people who play it. I'm not trying to sound corny, but this community is one of the most powerful I've ever seen and amazes me with some of the cool people in it. Which is why we should continue to enjoy it and spread that positivity. I'm not saying you're bad or evil for wanting the game to update, but I'm saying it comes to a point where you gotta accept that may not happen anymore. You can be sad over it, sure, but you can't let that become an object of obsession. Otherwise, as Engineer says, you won't ever be free of it. But that's not where the comic ends. Miss Pollen, tempted by the prospect of living forever, gives it up, deciding that her life is best spent in the here and now, not obsessing over living forever and prolonging it. The comic ends with the Mercs enjoying Christmas, now much older, and many years having passed since their service, as Scout talks to us. But it's not really Scout talking to us, but rather the devs talking through Scout. They still love TF2 and are thankful for all the love that it's gotten, however, they're moving on, and that shouldn't be a sad thing. We should rejoice in everything we have, and everything that's been done for this game. They made sure to leave us with a bot-clean game with a good few years left in the tank. Just because the game's no longer updated doesn't mean it will die instantly tomorrow. And when that time does come, I'd rather happily let TF2 die than prolong it in a state of limbo as a shell of its former self. TF2 is an amazing game, and the comic isn't meant to symbolize its end. Frankly, this game has another 5 years in the tank, I'd say. But it's a sign to be ready, an omen, or tale for us, that this game won't last forever, nor should we want it to live on as a shell, a husk kept alive out of desperation rather than love. One day, this game's end will come, and this comic symbolizes that. The devs are moving on, and we still have TF2, but it won't be here forever. So what are you doing? Go launch the game, play some 2 Fort or Hightower, interact with the community. And with that being said, I'm Asterix, and that's the video.